Evan Hale never meant for anyone else to read his journal. It was not secret in the dramatic sense. It was not full of plans or codes or dangerous ideas. It was simply a place where he wrote what he could not say out loud. On a ship filled with aliens who spoke in light pulses, sent patterns, or perfect calm sentences, the journal was the only place where Evan could be human without apology. The diplomatic vessel Concord of many stars drifted through quiet space as it approached Aurelian territory. The ship was large, slow, and built to look neutral, as if shape itself could prevent conflict. Inside, halls curved gently, lights stayed soft, and every sound was tuned to avoid offense. Evan had learned long ago to walk carefully, speak slowly, and never touch anything unless invited. He was a junior cultural liaison, which meant he explained humans to aliens and aliens to humans and failed at both equally. He had been chosen not because he was perfect, but because he was adaptable. He listened more than he talked. He apologized easily, and when the pressure grew too heavy, he wrote. That morning, Evan sat at a narrow desk in his assigned quarters, staring at the blank page of his digital journal. Outside his door, the ship hummed with controlled excitement. Today was the first formal reception with Princess Zyra of the Aurelian Empire, heir to one of the oldest powers in known space. Aurelians were tall, graceful beings with bodies that looked like living crystal shaped into smooth curves. Light passed through them and bent softly, giving them a constant glow. Their faces were expressive but unfamiliar. Their emotions carried more in posture and color than in words. Humans had known them for only 5 years and still understood very little. Evan sighed and began to write. He wrote about the pressure of representing all of humanity with every breath. He wrote about fear, about how one wrong word could ruin years of work. He wrote about the princess, too, describing her calm presence during previous meetings, the way the light in her form shifted when she listened. And yes, one very foolish, very human observation made during a moment of tired honesty. He finished the entry, embarrassed even with himself, and closed the journal. He stood, stretched, and prepared for the reception. In his hurry, he left the journal on the desk. He did not notice when the room-cleaning drone entered later. He did not notice when it scanned the surface for unattended objects. And he certainly did not notice when it flagged the journal as unsecured personal artifact and delivered it to the nearest authority for cultural review. The reception hall was beautiful in a quiet way. Light flowed across the walls like slow water. Delegates from a dozen species stood in careful clusters, each group speaking in their own way. Evan stood near the human ambassador, hands clasped behind his back, repeating calming phrases in his head. Then the air changed. The conversation softened. Movement slowed. A subtle shift passed through the room as Princess Zyra entered. She moved with effortless balance, her form catching and bending the light into gentle colors. Her presence did not demand attention, but it received it anyway. Evan felt his stomach tighten. This meeting mattered. The formal greetings began. Words of peace, shared goals, future cooperation. Evan translated, clarified, adjusted tone when needed. Everything was going well. Then a message appeared on Evan's wrist display. Cultural liaison, Evan Hale is requested for private audience. Princess Zyra stood alone near a curved window that looked out into the stars. She turned as Evan entered. "Please," she said in careful but fluent English, "do not be alarmed." She stepped closer, and only then did Evan notice the object she was holding. A familiar slim device, dark surface, slight scratch on the corner, his journal. "I believe this belongs to you," the princess said. Evan felt the blood drain from his face. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. "I read it," she added. The silence that followed was heavy. Finally, Evan managed to speak. "Your Highness, there has been a mistake. That was private. It was not meant. And they are not meant to be shared. You're not offended. Aurelians claim not to notice physical form, but if they truly do not, then I must be imagining how the princess carries herself with such confidence. I did not mean any disrespect. Was the remark meant as insult? If humans record their private truths, then perhaps they are the only species brave enough to admit what they think before they learn what they should say. And for the record," she added, "your observation was not inaccurate." He did not yet know that a single careless line, written in private, had just changed how the galaxy would see humanity. But it had. Evan Hale did not sleep that night. He lay on his narrow bunk, staring at the softly glowing ceiling of the Concord of many stars, listening to the steady hum of the ship's engines. His journal rested on the small table beside him, face down, as if it could still embarrass him just by existing. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Princess Zyra's calm glow and heard her words again. "We will speak again." Evan noticed the looks first, not hostile, curious. Several non-human delegates paused their conversations when he passed. A pair of insected translators tilted their heads toward him in synchronized interest. Even the ship's AI adjusted its greeting tone, adding a strange note of emphasis when addressing him. He tried to act normal. He attended briefings. He translated minor exchanges. He smiled when expected, but something had changed, and he could feel it like a pressure shift before a storm. It became clear during the midday council session. The delegates gathered in the circular chamber, each species arranged according to comfort and custom. Humans sat upright in simple chairs, others floated, perched, or rested on energy fields. Princess Zyra arrived last, as always, her presence settling the room into respectful silence. Evan stood near the outer ring, ready to assist. The session began routinely, discussing trade corridors and shared navigation data. Then Princess Zyra spoke, her voice calm and precise. "There is a matter of cultural significance I wish to address. It was created for understanding. Princess Zyra, are you suggesting a breach of protocol? This human recorded uncertainty, fear, admiration, and humor without filtering them for social advantage. This raises a question relevant to all gathered here. They are chaotic." He was escorted to a smaller chamber where Princess Zyra waited, joined by 2 Aurelian scholars and a translation node. The atmosphere was serious but not hostile. "Evan Hale," she said, "thank you for coming. You are the creator of the private record. We are messy, especially those. But it's also why we change." Not everyone approved. Whispers of concern spread through the older, more rigid powers. Humans were being labeled unpredictable, emotionally exposed, dangerous in subtle ways. Evan overheard one delegate say, "A species that admits its unfiltered thoughts cannot be trusted." She invited Evan to walk with her along the ship's inner observation ring, where stars drifted slowly past like scattered jewels. "You have caused disruption," she said without accusation. "I didn't mean to," Evan replied. "I know," she said, "that may be the most disruptive part. We are taught what truth should look like." The issue was escalated to a larger council. Humans were suddenly at the center of attention, not for strength or technology, but for the way they thought. Evan felt responsible, guilty, proud, afraid. The human ambassador assured him he had done nothing wrong, but Evan could see the worry behind the calm smile. Humanity was still young on the galactic stage. Every misunderstanding carried risk. The council session that followed was tense. Princess Zyra spoke again, her voice steady. "Humans do not hide their flaws from themselves. This is not weakness." By the end of the session, no ruling was made, but something important had shifted. Later, alone again, Evan opened his journal. He hesitated, then began to write. He wrote about fear, about standing at the edge of something bigger than himself, about how one awkward, foolish line had turned into a mirror for an entire species. He did not know how the galaxy would judge humanity. But for the first time, he believed that being human, exactly as they were, might be enough. And somewhere beyond the glass and stars, Princess Zyra was reading reports and thinking thoughts she had never been taught to think before. The council chamber was louder than Evan Hale had ever heard it, not in sound, but in energy. Emotions moved through the room like invisible waves. Some delegates glowed brighter, others shifted colors, tightened limbs, or flickered with static. The topic on every mind was the same, even when no one spoke it aloud. Humans. Evan stood in his usual place, hands folded, trying to look smaller than he felt. He wished briefly that his journal had never existed, or that he had been more careful, or that he had been anyone else. But wishing did not change reality. The previous cycle, a formal motion had been introduced by the Varking Collective, one of the oldest and most rigid civilizations in the known galaxy. They claimed that human, unfiltered cognition practices posed a destabilizing influence on diplomatic norms. In simpler terms, they thought humans were dangerous because they admitted what they really thought. Princess Zyra sat at the center of the chamber, her light calm but focused. As an Aurelian heir, she did not vote unless necessary, but when she spoke, entire empires listened. The Varking representative rose. Its body was tall and angular, metallic plates clicking softly as it moved. "Humans record thoughts without correction," it said. "They allow emotional distortion to exist without control. This practice spreads instability." Understanding is irrelevant if behavior becomes unpredictable. The chamber slowly split into sides. Evan realized something with a chill. This was no longer about his journal. This was about whether the galaxy was ready for a species that did not pretend to be perfect. After the session, Evan was called again, not by Princess Zyra directly, but by the human ambassador. The ambassador's office was quiet and dim. He gestured for Evan to sit. "You've become a symbol," the ambassador said softly. Evan winced. "I didn't want to be." "Yes," the ambassador agreed, "and fear makes people careful or cruel." Representatives from newer, smaller species gathered in a shared lounge, curious and cautious. Princess Zyra attended quietly, standing near the back. They asked Evan questions. Why do humans joke about serious things? Why do they write things they regret? Why do they admit fear? Evan answered honestly. "Because pretending we don't feel those things doesn't make them go away," he said. "It just makes us blind to them." The Varking Collective formally accused humanity of cultural contamination, claiming younger species were adopting human-style reflection and questioning long-held norms. They demanded a response. The human delegation was given one chance to speak. Evan did not expect what happened next. Princess Zyra requested that Evan Hale address the council. The chamber fell silent. Evan felt his legs go weak. Princess Zyra's voice carried calmly. "This discussion concerns the nature of human cognition. Let a human speak for himself. I made a mistake by leaving my journal unsecured. We don't write because we are proud of every thought. We write because we are responsible for them. Humans are not dangerous because we are honest. We are dangerous only if forced to lie." Later, Princess Zyra met Evan again alone. "You spoke well," she said. "I was terrified," he replied. "That too," she said, "was evident. Your species survives because it argues with itself before the universe forces the argument." And somewhere in the great machinery of galactic politics, a small human habit had become impossible to ignore. The reaction did not end with the council session. In many ways, that was when the real trouble began. News of Evan Hale's speech spread beyond the conquered of many stars. Transcripts were requested, then summaries, then recordings. Some were edited, some were not. Pieces of his words traveled through diplomatic channels, private networks, and cultural forums. Each retelling changed the tone slightly, but the core remained the same. Humans admitted their flaws. To some species, this was refreshing. To others, it was dangerous. The Varking Collective did not remain silent. Within 2 cycles, they released a formal declaration. They accused humanity of using emotional transparency as a manipulation tactic. According to them, humans were not honest by nature. They were strategic. Vulnerability, the Varking claimed, was simply another weapon. Evan read the declaration alone in his quarters. The words were cold, precise, and unsettling. They painted humans as predators who disarmed others by pretending to be weak. For the first time since this had begun, Evan felt angry. Not defensive, not afraid. Angry. He had never written his journal to control anyone. He had written it because some days the universe felt too heavy to carry silently. That same cycle, Princess Zyra requested a private meeting again. This time, when Evan entered the quiet chamber, he saw that she was not alone. A projection shimmered near the far wall, showing the symbol of the Keth Alliance, a powerful rival of the Aurelians and longtime partner of the Varking. "They intend to force a ruling," Princess Zyra said calmly. "One that limits human cognitive expression in shared space." The difference mattered. "They are afraid," Evan said. "Yes," Princess Zyra agreed, "and fear seeks control. If humans are allowed to continue spreading this practice, other species may begin questioning foundational doctrines. That destabilizes centuries of order." "What happens now?" Evan asked. Princess Zyra considered him carefully. "Now we decide whether honesty will be punished." Evan stood beside the human ambassador, feeling smaller than ever. The Varking representative spoke first. "We propose a restriction. Human private cognitive records must not be created or shared aboard diplomatic vessels. Then humans must be isolated from those influenced by their methods." Princess Zyra turned to Evan. "Would you speak again?" she asked. Evan hesitated, not from fear this time, but from understanding. Words could no longer be small. Anything he said now would echo far beyond the chamber. "Yes," he said quietly. He stepped forward. "I hear a lot of talk about danger," Evan began. "About instability, about control. But no one has said what humans have actually done wrong. When we write private thoughts, we are not broadcasting them. We are facing them. That's growth. The Aurelians were ancient, respected, and powerful. Their support changed everything. Princess Zyra continued. We have observed human honesty closely. It does not weaken alliances, it strengthens them. A species that admits its flaws cannot be easily controlled by them. Instead, a compromise was forced through. Human cognitive methods would not be restricted. Instead, they would be classified as a voluntary cultural exchange. Any species wishing to study or adopt them could do so freely. It was not a victory, but it was survival. Later, Evan sat alone in his quarters, exhausted. His journal lay open. He stared at the blank page for a long time before writing. He wrote about anger turning into resolve, about fear turning into purpose, about how honesty had become a line drawn in the stars. He wrote one final line before closing the journal. We didn't win by being perfect. We won by refusing to pretend. And some of them were afraid, and some of them were free. The galaxy did not change all at once. Change never did. It came slowly, quietly, the way gravity worked over time. At first, it was small things, requests for information, invitations to speak, private messages sent through secure channels asking questions no one wanted to ask in public. Evan Hale noticed it during the weeks after the ruling. He was no longer just a junior cultural liaison. He was still that on paper, but in reality, he had become something else. A reference point. A living example of a human habit that the galaxy could no longer ignore. Some species watched from a distance, cautious and silent. Others leaned in. A delegation from a minor trade coalition asked for permission to observe how humans conducted private reflection sessions. A young Aurelian scholar admitted, in careful words, that she had begun recording her own unstructured thoughts and did not know how to feel about it yet. A floating envoy from a gas-based civilization sent a message that simply said, "It is unsettling. But it feels honest." You have caused discomfort, she said once. Evan smiled tiredly. That seems to be our specialty. Her light shifted more freely than before, less controlled, more expressive. You have begun recording private thoughts, Evan said gently. She did not deny it. I delete most of them. They issued warnings. They spoke of instability and long-term consequences, but they did not act openly against humanity. They watched. That worried Evan more than anger would have. Then something unexpected happened. A minor border dispute between two mid-level empires escalated faster than predicted. Old treaties were questioned. Old grievances resurfaced. The situation looked dangerously familiar to those who studied history. A council intervention team was assembled, and for the first time, a human was asked to help mediate, not for strategy, not for strength, but for perspective. Evan stood in the neutral meeting chamber, facing representatives who barely tolerated each other's presence. Tension filled the air like static. He did not bring arguments, he brought questions. What are you afraid will happen if you give ground? He asked one side. What do you think the other side believes about you? He asked the other. They resisted at first, then hesitated, then slowly answered. It took hours, it was messy, voices rose, emotions surfaced. But when the meeting ended, no weapons were deployed. No borders shifted violently. The dispute did not disappear, but it paused. That was enough. Reports spread quietly. Humans were not miracle workers. They did not bring peace by force or clever tricks. They brought something simpler and harder. They made people look at what they were avoiding. The phrase began to circulate in translated form across networks and councils. Human honesty. The council has approved a new initiative, she said. A voluntary program, cross-species cognitive transparency studies. There is a difference. It showed me what power looks like without armor. But it will remember that humanity did not hide when the galaxy looked too closely. He was invited to speak, but he refused most offers. He did not want to become a symbol carved too cleanly. Instead, he taught. He taught young diplomats how to listen to themselves before speaking for others. He taught that mistakes could be examined instead of buried. He taught that being human was not about pride, but about responsibility. Late one evening in a quiet room, Evan opened his journal one last time. He wrote slowly. He wrote about fear that had turned into movement, about embarrassment that had turned into trust, about a galaxy that had not been conquered but nudged. He ended with a simple thought. Humans were never the strongest, we were never the oldest. But we were the ones who looked at our own flaws and decided not to look away.